There is a man alive in America right now who should have a statue. I mean that. Tom Payne broke the color barrier at the University of Kentucky, one of the most racially infamous basketball programs in American history. He was the number 2 overall pick in the NBA draft. Newspapers compared him, out loud, to a young Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. By every measure, Tom Payne should be a name we say in the same breath as Jackie Robinson, a pioneer, a trailblazer, somebody's hero. Instead, his name is a warning, because that same man, the first black basketball player in University of Kentucky history, a number 2 NBA draft pick, went on to become one of the most prolific serial rapists in the history of professional sports. Convicted in 3 different states, Georgia, Kentucky, California, and he spent almost his entire adult life, decade after decade after decade, locked behind bars. His name is Tom Payne, and his story forces you to sit with one genuinely disturbing question. How does a man with this much talent, this much history, this many chances, turn into this? Was he a good man the world broke? Or was the monster always in there, just waiting? Stick with me, because the answer gets darker the closer you look. And I'll be honest with you right up front. By the end of this, I don't think you're going to feel sorry for Tom Payne. I sure don't. Let's start with who he was, because this is the part that makes everything after it so hard to swallow. Tom Payne was born in Louisville, Kentucky in 1950, the oldest of 9 kids. And here's the first thing people get wrong about this case. They assume a story like this has to start in poverty and chaos. It doesn't. His father was a master sergeant in the United States Army. His mother had a college degree in biology. Between his 8 brothers and sisters, that one family earned 14 college degrees. 14. This was a stable, educated, disciplined household. So whatever went wrong with Tom Payne, you cannot pin it on where he came from. And physically, the guy was a phenomenon. He was reportedly the longest baby ever born at his local hospital, and he just kept growing, all the way up to 7'2". The wild part is, he barely played organized basketball until he was a sophomore in high school. Most 7-footers are projects. Payne was a natural. By his senior year at Shawnee High School, the 2 biggest programs in the country, Kentucky and UCLA, were both chasing him. He picked Kentucky, and that one choice wrote him into the history books before he ever scored a single point. Because in 1969, Tom Payne became the first African-American basketball player ever signed by the legendary University of Kentucky coach Adolph Rupp. Now, if you know your basketball history, you know how loaded that is. Rupp's Kentucky was the all-white team that famously lost the 1966 national championship to Texas Western and its all-black starting 5. A game people still talk about as a turning point for race in American sports. And then, here comes Tom Payne, a few years later, walking into that program as the man who breaks the line. That is heavy. That matters. And it was hard. Let me not gloss over this part because it's real. Payne heard racial slurs from crowds in opposing arenas. He was isolated. He had a temper that got him thrown out of games, and a lot of that fuse was lit by the abuse he was taking. That was a genuinely ugly thing to live through, and I'm not going to pretend it wasn't. But on the court, he delivered. 17 points a game, 10 rebounds a game, all conference honors. 1 season of varsity ball, and he'd already done enough to make the NBA come knocking. In 1971, the Atlanta Hawks made Tom Payne the number 2 overall pick in the NBA draft and signed him to a contract worth $750,000. In 1971 money, think about that for a second. 20 years old, 7'2", A history-making pioneer, suddenly rich, with his whole life in front of him. At that exact moment, Tom Payne had everything a young man could possibly want. Everything. And within a year, it was all gone, by his own hand. In May of 1972, Tom Payne was charged with the rape of a 22-year-old woman in Atlanta. And here is the detail that matters. It wasn't one isolated attack. It fit a pattern police had already been chasing. A tall man following women home in the early morning hours, a coat folded over his arm, a car waiting nearby. And the victim never forgot the one thing you simply cannot disguise: his size. She picked the 7'2" man out without hesitation. The Hawks cut him almost immediately. His NBA career was over after a single season, and he would never play professional basketball again. He was convicted and sent to a Georgia prison. And look, if the story ended there, it would already be a tragedy. The fall of a promising kid. One catastrophic, life-destroying decision. We could spend this whole video talking about wasted potential. But that is not where the Tom Payne story ends. That is barely where it begins. Because here's what makes Tom Payne different from a man who made one horrific mistake.
He kept going. And before I show you exactly how far this goes, do me one favor. If this is the kind of true crime story you want, the real one, the full arc, not the sanitized 2-paragraph version, hit subscribe right now. This channel digs into the cases other people summarize in 30 seconds and walk away from. And trust me, the back half of this one is so much worse than the front. So subscribe, tap the bell, and stay with me, because Tom Payne was just getting warmed up. After Georgia was done with him, Payne was extradited to Kentucky and put on trial for rape there, too. And by now, he had real support. He'd converted to Islam behind bars, and during his trial in Louisville, the local mosque sent the judge a petition with 2,000 signatures, swearing he was an innocent man. His own mother insisted it was a racist frame-up. The jury convicted him anyway. 2 states now, 2 separate juries. And by the time he was paroled in 1983, Tom Payne had spent most of his 20s and early 30s in a cell. And this is the moment a lot of people would tell you the story turns around. Because what Tom Payne did next sounds, on paper, like a redemption arc. So watch this part closely, because everything I'm about to show you looks like a man putting his life back together. Hollywood, fame, a fresh start. But there's one thing underneath all of it that never moved an inch. And in about 2 minutes, you're going to see exactly what it cost. He moved to California, and he reinvented himself completely. He took up professional boxing. He started landing work in Hollywood, small parts but real ones. A role in a TV movie, an appearance on the hit NBC sitcom Night Court. He even shot a McDonald's commercial. He was at parties rubbing shoulders with people like Elizabeth Taylor and Eddie Murphy. From the outside, it genuinely looked like a man who had done his time, learned his lesson, and clawed his way back to something like a normal life. He said it himself years later. On the outside, it looked like he was doing good. But here's the thing about Tom Payne. The talent was always real. The charm was real. The second chances were real. What never changed, what no fresh start ever touched, was whatever was actually driving him underneath all of it. And in 1986, it came back out. On Valentine's Day, 1986, a police car happened to drive past an apartment garage in Hollywood, and the officers saw Tom Payne in the middle of assaulting a woman, her face covered, his car idling nearby, ready to go. For once, there was no debate. No, did he or didn't he? He was caught, in the act, by the police themselves. "Guilty," said the California jury. 28 years, said the judge. And this time, there was no petition and no conspiracy theory.
Even the classmate defending him admitted that after this one, it got a whole lot harder to believe in his innocence. And I want to stop and point something out, because it matters. For years, some of the people who supported Payne genuinely believed the earlier convictions might have been unfair, that a towering black man in the 1970s South could have been railroaded. And honestly, given that era, that's not a crazy thing to have worried about. But that Valentine's night in Hollywood erased all of it. There was no railroading. There was no misunderstanding. The police watched it happen. So that's 3 states now: Georgia, Kentucky, California. 3 separate rape convictions for the same horrific crime spread across nearly 2 decades. And I'll be honest, somewhere in that timeline is the moment most of us would have stopped giving Tom Payne the benefit of the doubt. Drop a comment and tell me where yours was. Because the system had its own answer. And to its credit, it basically stopped letting him out. He served more than a decade in California. He was paroled in the year 2000 and immediately sent back to Kentucky for violating the parole on his original case, where he was handed another 15 years. When you add it all up, Tom Payne spent something like all but 4 years of a 40-year stretch behind bars. An entire adult life. Gone, in cells across the country. He was finally granted parole again in early 2019, an old man by then, in his late 60s. And today, he'll tell you he's changed. He quotes scripture. He talks about love and forgiveness. So let's come back to the question I asked you at the start. Why? Why does a man with every gift, every advantage, every chance at greatness throw it all away, not once, but again and again and again? Payne has an answer. He blames Kentucky. He blames the racism, the isolation, the hatred he absorbed as that lonely first black player in a hostile place. He says it planted something poisonous in him. And here's my honest take, for whatever it's worth. The racism Tom Payne faced was real. It was shameful. Nobody should have had to endure it. But it is not a key that unlocks serial rape. Millions of black Americans of that generation faced cruelty just as ugly, worse. And they did not leave a trail of brutalized women across 3 states. They became teachers and soldiers and fathers and, yes, pioneers. The injustice done to Tom Payne does not get to stand in for the injustice Tom Payne did to other people. Those are not the same scale, and I don't think they ever will be. That, to me, is the real horror of the Tom Payne case. It isn't that the world failed him. It's that he had every reason and every resource to become a hero. And he chose, over and over, with full knowledge of the damage he was doing, to become a predator instead. He could have been a name we celebrate. He made himself a name we have to warn people about. So I'm going to leave it with you, because I genuinely want to know where you land. Do you believe a man like Tom Payne can actually change after a lifetime like that? Should he ever have walked free in 2019? Or are some patterns just too deep, too repeated, too proven to ever trust again? Tell me in the comments. I read them, and I want to hear how you see this one. And if you want more stories like this, the ones about people who had everything and burned it to the ground, then subscribe and turn on notifications. Because the next one I'm telling you about involves one of the most famous athletes who ever lived. A single punch that nobody in the arena could see. And a fight a lot of people swear to this day was completely fixed. You are not going to want to miss it. I'll see you there.